There we are.
All right, all right, all right, all right. Welcome, welcome, welcome to this week's edition of Just Two Dads. Um, Never wants to be boring. Brian is on the road this week, but that is dedication. So because he's still on. Matter of fact, his being on the road is part of his dad duty. So we appreciate you being here, Brian. This week we don't have a guest. It is just the two of us. So it is as we began, where we just typically have our conversations and have people hopefully and join us and chime in and share comments and enjoy what we have to say. How you
Love it.
doing?
I'm good, buddy. How are you?
I am doing great. I'm doing great. We chose an interesting topic for today. There's a handful of things. We've got a couple of things that have taken place since our last broadcast. We are now on Apple. What is it? Apple I. What am I? Apple Podcasts. So you can now find us on Apple, and I believe we are on Spotify at this point as well. And looking to grow. In addition to the fact that we're on Facebook Live, obviously, where it all began just a few short months ago. But we decided to talk about today, review some of the topics that we covered in the past, and we've got some great things coming up in the next coming weeks. But the topics that we've discovered over the past couple months have been estate planning, life insurance, and things like that as it relates to special needs, social interaction as well, and how that relates to how businesses and corporations deal with or their employees deal with social interaction with their associates, their guests and customers. And we had a fantastic lady by the name of Layla Luna, and we had some severe technical difficulties that day from her end, and we weren't able to have the video to go with the audio. But why don't we start there, especially because even though she's not aware of this, this is all created for the intent to uplift people, generally speaking, but particularly those in the special needs community. And so we want to promote any type of goodness that anybody's doing, especially in that community. And Brian, I'll let you talk a little bit about what we know of what she's got going on and what's transpired since she's been with us, so we can get the word out there as well.
Yeah, absolutely. I think the thing that I love about the conversations I've had with Layla, we had with her a couple weeks ago, and I've had subsequently with her, is she's fierce. She really is. She's a champion, and the idea for her foundation, just be the change.org, is it came from her personal experience. She and her family had gone to a restaurant. Her son is on the autism spectrum. He's 12 years old, and he was having some challenges with sensory input, and was having what others would say a tantrum. And she and her family were asked to leave the restaurant. So the other patrons and the employees were having issues and didn't really know how to properly deal with it, and so they left. And she was like, "This is wrong. Businesses should allow and be aware of how large this market is, and knowing that there are sensory input challenges for a lot of people. By the way, some people who've never been diagnosed as being on the spectrum have sensory input issues. If you've ever been to a theater and saw a movie and your first thought was, my gosh, that was so assaultive. Like, I was assaulted on every sensation, right?
Right.
There's a sensory input component there, right? Some people don't even realize.
Right.
And so she's doing work with companies to create headsets that folks who have sensory input sensitivities can wear if they're going into a mall, if they're going into a movie theater, if they're going into another location. And so her foundation is committed to educating corporations and businesses and restaurants and any place where the public gathers, and creating sensitivity and awareness, education and support for those employees, to create a better environment. So it's amazing. And she's raising money for her foundation. She's got a lot of people who are interested. It's an incredible deck. So she's getting the word out. So anything that we can do to help support her. I could imagine a Target creating special shopping times for families who are dealing with special needs issues to have some quiet time, dim the lights, put, have it be a calming atmosphere. to create opportunity for, there to, to be in a shopping experience that's unchallenged. Layla's
Right.
amazing, and this Friday she's speaking at the Best You Expo. It was called Best You Expo in Dallas, but I think they're doing it virtually. So she has a slot to speak, and we'll be talking about autism and how these kinds of things impact. So people should definitely go check her out. Follow Just Be on social media, and wherever we can find corporate sponsors or people who are interested in this, and maybe they have personally, like her, experienced their own challenges in a public place. Maybe that they understand and agree and want to support an organization that's committed to changing the environment around folks who are dealing with those kinds of challenges. So
Most definitely. Yeah, we just put
that's
it in the
her.
chat too. So the
Beautiful.
the event is actually there because they're a huge and growing organization in terms of personal development and things of that sort. And so she actually participated in the one that they had here. And it's funny because since COVID, there's the Best You, Los Angeles, and wherever this next one is, in Texas, in different cities.
Dallas,
But
yeah.
it's Dallas, okay. But the city is almost out the window because at the time that they began putting them together, the plan was for them to be live physical events, which they've done and they've been successful at. But now they're all virtual, so it's very,
Right.
very interesting, and it's actually just in terms of uplifting and empowering people as well. What I know of that entity, just overall, anybody that has something to add to someone in the way of personal development and things of that sort, they have the door open for people to be able to do that. So it's an interesting platform. The gentleman that put that together is somebody that obviously believes in doing those kind of things and lifting people up. The next thing that we talked about, and this goes back to last week. Our guest last week was Glenn from Legacy Shield, who works with us and Intervivos with regard to special needs trusts and wills, and that was I enjoyed that probably more than I don't know. It was one of my favorite ones because I felt like I learned so much, and it was something that I thought I knew a lot about. I expected to learn, but I learned so much more than I thought I would. And that's always surprising, and it was a wonderful thing. And there were instances that Glenn brought up with regard to the importance of the wills and trusts and things that I thought I knew that I was pretty surprised about. I would imagine you feel the same way.
Absolutely. Yeah. No, that was really great. Really phenomenal work that they're doing. And people think that putting a will and a trust together is extremely expensive. And I think if done properly and with the right guidance, it can actually be very cost effective. And Glenn's company, Legacy Shield, and the attorneys that they have working with them are, very, very conscious of trying to keep costs down and making sure that they can provide something that's going to be beneficial. I'd much rather have somebody put something together that's beneficial than have them not have their family taken care of, for the unforeseen.
Oh, definitely, most definitely, yeah.
So,
and then the other thing we were gonna talk about, which this is where I hope that people would chime in some, is we are in the midst of the political season, and it is not like any we've ever seen before, especially if you've seen a couple. I don't know if you saw the other day. There's some very interesting things. I'll get to us talking about how this affects the special needs community and and things of that sort in particular. But just generally speaking, there's so much division that's within the country right now on either side of the fence. But something interesting, I don't know if you saw the other day, that Shaquille O'Neal at the age of 48 just recently voted and admitted that it was the first time in his life ever that he voted.
I saw that.
Yeah. And my first reaction was just like, oh, that's horrible, whatever. I thought about the fact, and it is to an extent, but what's redeeming about it is the fact that he said so, is that he admitted it, that he shared it. Because he didn't have to do that. He could have just simply casted his vote, and that would be the end of that. He has come out on behalf of candidates in the past, at least people that were running for sheriff and things of that sort. So I think he wanted to make sure that he owned that. And it's interesting. I think last year, when did the in the primaries, I think that took place. Elijah actually went with me to the polls, and we happened to be. I was going to run out to drop off my ballot, and I just thought, he's not going to know exactly what the concept is and everything, but who am I to say what he is or is not going to get? So why not take him with me? So he went in there with me to the booth and everything, and we walked through it and everything, and don't know quite what he got from it, but it's interesting because invariably when someone pops up on a screen, I'll ask him, I'll say, you know who that is, bud? Just to find out where he's at. 9 times out of 10, he knows who it is. And sometimes it can be somebody, way back in the past. We were at a restaurant once, and it was around Christmas time, and there's some music on, and I said, Elijah, who's that? Or what he does is he says to me, who's that, Daddy? And my response is, I don't know, Elijah. Who is that? That's his cue for me to ask him. I said, I don't know. Who is that? He goes, that's Perry Como. And I was like, I don't know why you know that, but that's good. So the same thing applies. Talking about candidates and stuff. And I say, who is that? And he'll say, that's so-and-so. And you'll be surprised that he knows that. So there's several things to look at in this political season in terms of like how much at the age of 14 for a neurotypical kid does he absorb and get, and then how much in his case does he absorb and get. And the direction I'm going to go in now is more of a question than a statement. So and I don't know what you might have to add, because we've not talked about this a whole lot. That's how real we keep it. But looking at legislation that will potentially affect the special needs community. I know that there's one of them which ties into, again, with one of our previous guests, who's Georgiana Jungo Kelman, who is a special needs education attorney. And there was some conversation that we had going back and forth with regard to LAUSD and what is perceived as hypocrisy with regard to how they do and don't want to open the classes for the distance learning. Why don't you talk a little bit about that?
Yeah, well, I think that the challenges that schools across the country are having right now is the distance learning limitations for neurotypical kids is tough enough, right? Some people don't have strong enough internet, or they don't have access to internet in their homes, and they don't have the devices, or the devices have limitations, or even if they have devices and they have the internet, they drop out. I'm traveling today with my 13-year-old who's in last year middle school. He couldn't get online today, and we are in the middle of downtown Los Angeles with plenty of wireless. We have Wi-Fi access, and it's got a device that was provided by the school, and yet for 20 minutes of the class couldn't get online. So there's already challenges that exist. The infrastructure wasn't ever in place to support distance learning with so many kids and so many people, and everybody working from home online as well, right? We've saturated the internet lines, if that's a possibility. I never thought we could actually max them out, but it does create a lot of instability when it comes to internet access. And so now add to the fact that you've got special needs kids who their challenges of sitting in front of a computer and with technology that's unstable, and sitting still, or sitting to take in input from a screen as opposed to a live environment. That is a whole new set of challenges. And in Los Angeles, the Los Angeles Unified School District is a massive organization. Billions of dollars, and most of it goes to administration, not to the teachers. And the administration at the LAUSD has been given the green light and has been given the approval to do in-person learning and to do one-on-one learning with special needs kids. But at the administrative level, they have sent out clear communication to their teachers that they do not condone it and don't want them to be doing it. And it's less of a safety measure as it is, I think, just management more than anything. Whatever their reasons are, they've just added another level of complication, and it's wrong. It's just, again, they make accommodations for children with special needs. I don't know if, and I'm sure you know this, but maybe the audience doesn't know this, but when a special needs child is being provided educational services in a mainstream school setting, that school receives funds from their state for additional training resources. And so if that child is not being served and the family wants to remove the child from the mainstream school and put them in a school that's more specialized, A, the school, the school, is that me repeating? I'm not sure what happened there.
No, that was me. Sorry.
Oh, okay. So the school loses its funding from the state, right?
Right.
The school loses its funding from the state, and the district has to pay for the education resources for that child in another location. So if the public school system can't provide the proper resources for that child and they have to be moved into a private setting, then the school district has to pay the private education facility. So you can imagine, from a really purely financial perspective, they fight any kind of change to the status quo of having special needs children be served by the public school setting. So it's a challenge in the best of times, and under normal circumstances, additional challenges with distance learning and the current situation now. Thank goodness we have people like Georgiana Junko Kelman out there advocating for families and for special needs kids to get the best services. So,
and it's interesting because, me personally, it kind of goes up and down in terms of how I feel affected, and how, from my perspective, our kids seem to be affected by the quarantine and by distance learning. And so, because for me, from a selfish standpoint, it's a little more convenient in that I'm not getting up in the morning and running them to school, doing appointments with clients, then turning around and going back out. Like for instance, there's at least one day where they get out at 2. We go on here at 2:00.
Right.
That wouldn't take place in a pre-COVID environment. But so for me, it's easy to say, well, it's not a whole lot more difficult. But then I thought the other day, as I tried to, about somebody else's perspective, and I ended up asking the kids, our girls in particular. One is a senior, the other is a sophomore. Asking them, what do you think about all this in terms of being at home? Do you prefer it? Do you miss school? And they both really miss school more so than I expected. And in Elijah's case, even though he's verbal, he's not going to necessarily come right out and say, I miss school. But his way of telling you will be by telling you that he wants to go, which he's done on several occasions. So it's starting to get to him just a little bit, because part of his routine was, go to school. After school, there's certain errands that we run, and we, get a snack, and his favorite places to go to and stuff like that. And that's kind of out the door. Quite frankly, all things considered, he's done pretty well for having gone a long time without knowing when he's going to go out the door and go someplace. And that's another aspect of the whole quarantine, which is another thing we talked about on one of our earliest shows, which is how is everyone affected by the quarantine and their kids as it relates to social interaction. Well, in his case, he likes going to retail stores. There's a handful that he likes going to. He prefers, even though he'll settle for the drive-through, he likes the experience of going in and sitting down to eat. He likes reading the signs. He likes being involved in the transaction, taking the card, putting it in, the debit, the code, whatever the case might be, all of it, getting the receipt, greeting the person by name behind the counter, even if he's never seen them before and he's reading their name tag, all of that. So, he'll ask lately, it's like, can we go to such and such and go inside the door? I want to go inside the door. And I'm like, well, being able to go in there and then keep your mask on, washing your hands, keeping your distance and stuff like that, that's twice as important. But at the same time, you have to learn to think of the value in things. In Napoleon Hill's classic Think and Grow Rich, it says, every adversity is a seed of equal or greater value if we look for it. So anytime something comes about, I try to go, where's the seed of equal or greater value? Where's the value? Where's the value? And in this case, with him, the one thing that we learn, which is, is that which we are reminded of all the time, which is, You never know. You never know what he's going to do. You never know. And because he wanted to get out so bad, he's willing to conform to whatever the requirements are to be out there. So, for instance, just total transparency, in washing his hands, what he would do is he would, go to the soap dispenser and wash like the top portion of his hand. We'll put the soap there and then just maybe run his hands together right on the top. And even then you go back and forth between being glad that he's doing it at all and thinking you can, gradually slide into him doing it correctly, or just, no, look, boy, this is how you're going to do it. You have to take a bamboo approach as opposed to being so rigid. And so, but in this case, I don't know if it's because he's been inside so long, doesn't go out as much, but he's got the mask on the whole time and he's washing thoroughly during the whole thing. But there's still an adjustment period that takes place because it's, he wants to go a little more often, and you still have to pick and choose and gauge because, meltdown isn't quite what it used to be, in these times. And you see so many situations where people are, dealing with either other members of the public that aren't sure how to deal with kids or law enforcement even, which goes back to some of the things that we were talking about in terms of what Layla Luna does with Just Be.
Right.
Which is,
but I would say this,
mm-hmm.
The interesting thing is that the challenges that our kids are facing today, in a way, it's going to, as like everything, it's going to set them up for things that they'll have to incorporate into their lives in the future. The thing that we've seen with the pandemic is that businesses are rethinking the way that they're having their employees. Before, if employees wanted to do remote work, it was kind of met with a bit of resistance. In some cases, it was really, well, maybe you do it on Monday and Friday from home, and you're in the office Tuesday through Thursday, and some people say, well, you're not as productive. Now everybody's being forced, to home. There's a massive acceptance, and again, the technology has improved considerably, even though it's still jinky. And it's now become a normal part of, our day-to-day work lives. And so having kids have to adjust to doing school from home is not much different than what adults are having to do adjusting from working from home. They used to say, like, the challenge of working from home is if you set your desk up in your bed, that gets old because you don't have the variability of the location, right? And we're creatures of habit. And so you want to move from your kitchen table to a desk to another room for relaxation, to a different room to do your meditation, to a different room to, the assumption that everybody must own a 6 or 7 bedroom mansion, with the gym and everything else. Because we don't, we've had to make those adjustments and set those little silos up in our home to be successful working from home. But that's the adjustment that we're having to make as adults. And so with our kids, the fact that our kids are doing that and having to make those adjustments in school, it's really kind of a precursor to being flexible and learning how to be, productive and in the most optimal environment to be successful. So, that's the one good thing I could say. That's the one silver lining coming out of this, is that we're teaching our kids to be a little bit more adaptable to the kinds of things that they may have to do and may take on in the workforce. I think the one thing that's common though among all of us is that we are people and we're human and we love human interaction. I mean, I think for the most part, I know some people don't, but for the most part, some people crave that human interaction.
Yeah, it's
so
I'm part of a men's group, within our firm, as you know, and we have we deal with different topics and different subjects each week, all geared towards making you a better man, better husband, better father, better friend, better brother. And within that group, we have different teams, and I have the pleasure and honor of leading one of those teams. And on our weekly call, one of the guys was talking about how he's having a hard time adjusting because he loves people. And it kind of hit me where it's like, I haven't had that much of a hard time. Socially, it hasn't really bothered me. And I'm a person, as you know, like you, I love interacting with people, but it just hasn't really hit me yet, and I don't know. I don't know what it is. It hit me at times, like for instance, when I went to visit my mom and went to drop something off, and she's got a routine where she opens the garage, pull up, come into the garage, you know, drop the stuff off, stand back, you greet at a distance, and that's it. And that's when it hits you. It's like, oh, this is kind of like, this is weird,
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, but I feel like, I don't know. What about you? How do you feel about that? Are you like just itching for it to go back to whatever normal is going to be?
It's so funny because I have an opinion, and yet I've noticed over the last couple weeks that where I have an opinion about how things should be, I don't always act in concert, and I'm copying to it myself right now.
Yeah.
First of all, I'm a single dad, and so the concept of dating has completely changed, and that's a subject we'll talk about, at another time. But dating
Yeah.
in the pandemic it's different, and in certain parts of California, other parts of the country, by the way, there things are wide open. In other parts of Southern California, for example, down in the Orange County area, it's a much different environment. There's a lot more openness. There's a lot more restaurants are open. Most are doing seating and dining outdoors, but there's a lot of activities that people are engaged in. And frankly, I've enjoyed going down to Orange County from the LA area and participating in that. And so I think, and in my opinion, is we all should do everything we possibly can to
Mhm.
to give our first responders some breathing room in our hospitals, and not put ourselves in a dangerous situation where we could possibly spread the environment. We're driving out to Las Vegas right now. Now, by the way, Las Vegas is a hotspot. We're not going to the casinos, but we're going to the residential area. Their perspective is completely different than ours here in California, and so I think opinion-wise
Right.
that if I were to tell myself, hey, I'm thinking about doing this, I would say, well, that's dumb. Why are you going? Nevada's had a lot of, occurrences of COVID, and that's kind of a dumb thing to do. And yet I have, like, I'm doing this for a business reason. And I'm doing it, and we take precautions. We have hand sanitizer. I've got my masks. We stay socially, appropriately socially distanced. So,
Right.
taking all of the steps. And so my perspective is everybody has this drive and desire and hope that we can get back to new normal, or as one of my colleagues said recently, the new different.
Right.
And I think that the more that we can be conscious of doing whatever we can when we are in a public environment. So if we are with a lot of people, wear a mask. If wherever you can, be socially distanced. And if you're doing all of that and taking those kinds of precautions, you're improving your chances of preventing a massive spread. So I think in practice, I actually do. I actually, I kind of go the other way. I want to be out and be back to interacting with people. In my brain, I'm like, oh, don't, let's stay. It's okay to stay home. You know what I mean? I have these.
Yeah.
I always joke about I have these arguments with myself about what to do, but by action and by drive, I really I like being out with people. That's a big thing for
Yeah.
me. I like being social. I like being communicative with people, and
Yeah. And it's interesting too because I don't know. There's different pieces of it, and we veered a little bit from the special needs portion of it. But I just thought it's really interesting. Like for instance, you know, my gym closed, and my daughter and I are the ones that primarily use the membership a little more than anybody else. And I suspended it for, I think it's supposed to be like 3 months or something. But we bought equipment since and have stuff in the garage,
Right.
and now I need to cancel it because I'm like, I'm not going back anytime soon.
Yeah,
You know?
and that's one of those things that I would say you're probably right. Right, there's an opportunity to have more chance of stuff spread in a gym environment where everybody's
More
working
stuff.
out and breathing heavy, and
A gym is a petri dish. Just look at it
it,
that way. I
same
mean,
with
it
the
is.
hospital, right? Hospitals are
Right.
petri dish, gyms.
Right.
There's certain settings
Yeah.
that definitely are. And so for me, like that, I'll avoid those. I'm good with that. I mean, clearly I'm
And I
avoiding
know
the gym.
people that have posted videos about, they're posting videos about their workout. They had a friend that posted about a trip they took with their family to the zoo, and the longer it happens too, you go from like, that's crazy, I would never do that, to I wonder, and you stop and think. And it's the same thing with someone that has a child that is dealing with, because I belong to several groups on Facebook that are different autism groups.
Yeah.
And sometimes someone will post a situation that you just find yourself going, I have no idea what that's like. And I think of our worst experiences and biggest challenges, and they don't involve anything that other people have gone through. And there's everything varies. Like I know a couple summers ago, Elijah, for almost all his years, attended summer school on a regular basis, and that's because we wanted to keep him in the, in some kind of routine. And a couple summers ago, he did not go, and we all kept rock star hours. I shouldn't say we all. He did, because even though he would go to bed at 2, 3, sometimes 6 in the morning, and I don't mean like he's up swinging from the chandelier. I mean like the lights are off and he's in bed, but just would not fall asleep. For some people, they don't realize that erratic sleep patterns are part of the spectrum, and boys on the spectrum in particular produce less melatonin than girls. So any autism family has probably invested a fair amount in melatonin gummies, and they're good stuff, by the way.
Yeah.
But so what happened is he would literally go to bed at times like 6, 7, 8 in the morning. Sometimes like not till, like, in the worst cases, not till like noon. Just be up on a cycle, and that was like our worst thing, probably close to it. One of them right up there. But then I saw something the other day that somebody posted. I've seen people posted about having electronics and windows and things bashed and stuff like that. There was somebody that posted about like 3 TVs that they went through like a 6-month span because their just kept breaking the TV.
Oh my God.
And I say it all the time, but you can forget that your biggest nightmares are some other people's dreams.
Right.
You never know. But it's interesting. That's why, again, we need each other. And that's why one of our previous topics again was also the value of a village. Those are the things that that bring us all together and unite us, and are immeasurable in value.
Yeah. Well, and it's funny. It's one of the reasons why I like doing this with you, because it forces me to, stop and think about, these issues that all of our families are dealing with, and contemplate, to your point, some people, they feel that it's their worst nightmare, and other people like, oh, I'd trade my life for your worst nightmare because it's so much better than what I'm dealing with, right? It's all perspective. And at the end of the day, we say this a lot, at the end of the day, it's all about empathy and love, and putting yourself in other people's shoes, and knowing that, we're all in this, on this blue planet together, and trying to make the best of our travels together for now and forever long we're at. We've been talking a lot about the window. I've been talking about the window a lot ever since we had that, we heard that concept by our friend Ed Milet talking about, every time frame is like a window, and that time that I have with my 13-year-old son here, that window's closing, that he's home, he's going to go off to school at some point, and then, that window will be closed, and then the new window opens up, and going to be here for as long as we, enjoy the ride for as long as we possibly can. We never know when that window's going to be closed.
Right. It's like life is one big window, but then you have all these smaller ones that also represent like seasons. And some of the seasons come, from in terms of the weather, those things come once a year. But the seasons of our life come once, period. You're only a teenager for but so long, and then when you become an adult, the world changes, and then when we become a parent, the same thing, occurs then. And it's funny because you're mentioning Ed sharing that analogy. The first time he talked about anything like that is when he said that, he met some gentleman that said to him, how old is your son? And, met him when he was with his son Max, and I think he's maybe 5 or something like that. And he said, you enjoy that while you can, because pretty soon that 5-year-old will be gone forever. And so will the 6-year-old, that kind of thing. And you're like, that's obvious. Nothing could be more
Yeah,
right. It's not like politics or sports where there's an opinion, no matter what numbers say. It's something that is a fact. But as factual as it is, every now and then it just kind of eludes you because you get so caught up into just going about the day doing what you do. But the windows, each
for sure.
window never sit still, and they're closing every single day. That's absolutely right. Most definitely, definitely.
Yeah.
So, what were you
Yeah,
going to say?
and it's funny because in the work that we do, when we help families look at their financial situation. I was just having this conversation day before yesterday. Actually, I have the conversation as you know every day, but 2 days
Yes.
ago with a young man who's got a 1.5-year-old, and it's their first child, and they want to have two or three, and he through the pandemic he took a job at a company, and what like to having the security of the job, and we kind of talked about it. He's young, he's 30, and asked him the question like, when do you want to retire? And he's like, well, probably normal like 60, 65. And I said, how long do people in your family live? And he's like, oh, that's interesting. I think in general my folks live to about 75, 80, maybe 80. It goes like that. That's like
Oh,
you're going to
does it
work
ever?
for the next right you're going to work for the next 35 years and then have 50 years left. Oh, I might be losing you.
Lost you a little there. Are you still there?
Lost
Can
you
you
a little
hear me?
bit. I can hear you. Can you hear me okay? I don't see
I
you
can hear you,
anymore,
but
but
I
I can
couldn't
hear
see
you.
you there for a minute. We can't see you, but we can hear you.
Okay, yeah, and just going back to reflecting on the idea that time is so fleeting, right? And even if we lived, I was thinking about it. I'm going to be 57 in a couple of months, which first of all I can't even believe. But that's 3 years
Right?
away from 60. We talk
Yeah.
about the window of time. The time that I have with my son is really, what is it? It's 25 years, right? Maybe
Hmm.
left.
Technically, yeah.
You know
Yeah.
what I mean? It's a lot closer to
Yeah.
the end than I am to the beginning. And you kind of think about like, wow, and they say it goes faster as you get older, and that's the truth. And I keep thinking, oh my God, well, 57, it kind of came like really quickly. I can't imagine if 25 years is going to go even faster. Man, I better do something because it's I feel like I'm losing opportunity to make stuff happen, right?
Well,
In
yeah,
some
it's
respects.
funny. It's like I was thinking the other day of the distance my 20th between 20 and 30 versus um, 40 and 50. I mean, it's all 10 years, but
Yeah,
some decades go by a whole lot faster than others.
for sure,
You
for
know,
sure.
they really do, and it's because of where depending on where you're at. So everything with that has to do with trying to just make sure that we add value and make the most out of our time.
Yeah,
There's so many examples around us, but at the end of the day, it still seems like it gets very easy to forget that because there's that part of you that really does think you're going to be here forever. Just like no matter what you've seen happen to other people, if you're not crazy enough to think you're going to be here forever, at the very least you're thinking like sure something could happen tomorrow, but I'm pretty much going to be here. Like it's
yeah.
not like there's some preparedness or something like that involved when nothing could be further from the truth.
No, that's the truth. That's the truth. And I think when you start out and you're married and you start with kids in your first house, it does feel like there's a sense of permanence and it's going to be like this forever and it's going to be wonderful. And so planning for the future, that's like planning for a change in your situation, right? Or planning for the unforeseen or planning for, retirement, which for some people, especially if they're just beginning a job, that's just so out of their brains of possibility that they don't people generally don't plan right for the
Mm-hmm.
future until they're
Right.
like, well, man, maybe I better start planning for the future, and I'll get to it next year and someday. And I
Right.
joke about there's no such day on the calendar as someday. Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, I don't see someday, or any day.
Yeah. Someday is not a day of the week.
Right.
Yeah,
Right.
but we treat it as though it is though. Like I like to say that we treat life as though somehow like we've just got some hookup on you, or like on somebody's guest list to get into heaven, and or just gonna like it's just gonna last and be.
Yeah, yeah, for sure.
Yeah, but nothing
Yeah,
could be
further from the truth. Yeah, and then you think about these families who have, have had family members who've gotten sick during the pandemic, and weren't planning on, having their loved ones die alone in a hospital, or have a funeral service with only a handful of people to honor them in their passing. And then it makes life seem like it's not worth much, right? If when you die when you die and you don't have the, I'll call it the luxury of having dignity at the end of your days, because it's in the context of a pandemic, it makes you kind of rethink everything that we're doing, right? It kind of makes you rethink, how am I spending my time? How am I spending my day? How am I spending my life? Am I in the right relationship? Am I in the right house? Am I in the right city? Am I in the right job? Am I doing the right thing? I think everybody goes through that process of sort of rethinking, like, I want to find worth and value and make sure that I'm adding value to people's lives and everything that I'm doing.
right in some way, shape, or form. Most definitely.
Some way, shape, or form, for sure. That's why I like doing these with you, because I know that that's your perspective, Sean. I know your perspective is always, how can I add value? And that's why I love
and you know what? To be really, really, really just completely honest, it's always a fight. I don't know. We mentioned Ed Mylett earlier. He's one of the few people that I've heard actually admit this. But I think most of what he shared or continues to share, the impression is given that, he's mastered it. And that applies with some things. But I think with a lot of things, he'll admit that it's a work in art, a work in progress. And for me, I think that applies with everything. And being a parent to a child with special needs, to me, it kind of, it shines a light on the areas that I need to work on and work in so much. And I have to be honest, I have to stop and look to see where I've come far, because I'm so focused on sort of, where I gotta go. And I have to work to make sure, like, at the end of a day, that I can let go of what I haven't, because I've told people that, I'm not always the most patient, especially with the things that, challenges Elijah may have socially or whatever have you. And it's an interesting thing. It's a gift and a challenge, because he is like really, really in tune to the emotions of other people, especially the people that he's closest with and to. And so that means that Laura and I, he's in tune with us more so than anything. So he may want, like, for instance, earlier today, he, I think I told you about this, she's just such a warrior out front and has been involved in a more hands-on manner than me with regard to a lot of his distance learning. So
yeah,
she's back at work today, so she's doesn't have quite as much time. So I'm popping in and checking on him and that kind of stuff. And he was doing this anyway before, but even more so now. Whereas I'm in the room and he's getting ready to begin a lesson, and his way, because he'll speak either in the third person or kind of in a roundabout way. So what he says is, Elijah will stay in privacy. What that means is, get out. So, the lesson is beginning, and I'm like, yeah, I know, you stay in privacy. I'm just here to make sure everything's okay. Yeah, yes, Daddy, but Elijah will stay in privacy right now. I'm like, dude, and then I want to help him in the thing. And if I now, and granted, this is where my ownership comes in. If I just walk out of the room and I'm just like, okay, I'll be out here if you need me, I'll go. But, and this is like I'm having a conversation with myself. But I'm disappointed and I'm hurt at it. So I'm like, okay, whatever. Like, then I leave the room, and because he's in tune, he's not like, oh gosh, I thought you'd never leave. His thought is like, no, like, wait, Daddy, no, it's okay. And what he wants is you to give him the green light and let him know that it's all right. So, and then I'm not as calm as I am now. So my thought is like, my gosh, you kicked me out. Do you want me to stay? Do you want me to go? Which one is it? And then I even calmly ask, which one do you want? Do you want me to stay? Or do you want me to go? And then that's where, of course, I think I'm using this great reverse psychology where he's gonna, well, I guess I want you to stay. But what he really wants is just to know that it's okay. So, the work in progress and becoming a better human being is just like so constant and so right in your face when you're dealing with something.
But what a great lesson, though, even for you as a parent to have worked through that communication, in its unique form, which is really what it is, a unique form. It's a common human capacity to emote and to empathize, and yet a unique way of delivering that communication. It's almost like learning a second language. You really, and I think that is what happens, right? When we have kids who have special needs, or children with special needs, to correct myself, we're forced to learn a new way of communication. I remember when Jordan was in her early intervention program, and she wasn't learning how to communicate with words in the normal way, and she learned sign language as her first language, actually. And we learned sign language, and it just eased her ability to learn how to communicate and learn how to use words at that point. So, everybody,
you're coming and going.
They're just learning another language, like ESL, right? Just learning a second language. You've mastered a second language. It's amazing.
Well, I wouldn't even know if I said mastered. I think Laura's mastered it. I get.
What was that?
I said Laura's who's mastered it. I get better at it. And to be really, really honest and really truthful,
Did I lose you there?
If I get, can you hear me? Hopefully you can. We can still hear you. But if I get praise as a parent and recognition or something like that, that feels weird sometimes. Well, we've lost Brian. I'm sure he's going to pop right back in since he's on the road. But just keeping with what I was saying is that there's times where I honestly feel it feels a little uncomfortable when there's some praise or recognition that's given for being not so much for being a good parent, but when it goes beyond good and you're like, oh my gosh, you're so great with your son, and I don't ever feel like it's a flat out fraud, but there are times where I feel like it's I'm not the most comfortable with it. I was saying, Brian, to just before you pop back in there, that it is such a work in progress that when I'm complimented or recognized or praised or anything like that for being a good parent, it's okay. I feel okay with it when someone says that you're a good parent, but when they, oh my gosh, you're such a great parent, or the more it's given, the more comfortable it feels at times, because the closest I get to being completely comfortable with it is just going, well, I try, it's a work in progress. If somebody's more over the top than that with it, then it feels like, give me a little more time. When I get there, I'll let you know, because it just, it just, I don't know. That's just the truth, and that's where it is.
Listen, at the end of the day, right? No matter what anybody says to you, until you're at the, at the end, and God says to you, good work, faithful servant. We don't often take it in. So I get it, right?
Yeah.
So,
yeah. Definitely.
I think that the one thing that that anybody who watches this or who has had the benefit, who's been able to see us do any of these episodes knows that they've been there. We speak the truth about those kinds of things, and we have a certain level of humility, and that the people who go through the same things that we go through, they know it, they acknowledge it, and in a way you're acknowledging them by saying out loud those things that they all feel and that we all feel. And so I will tell you, you're an amazing dad, you're an amazing husband and partner, and you're an amazing colleague and business partner, and also a warrior for these causes and for these families. So it's an honor for me to be in conversation with you about this stuff, and so if you don't take it in, that's okay. You will at some point, but I will tell you, you're doing great work, faithful servant. So amazing.
Thank you much. And if you can see that, if your ability to see that is based on, what I do, just as much of that is based on your eyes, which means that you have to have it. You have to have some of it in order to be able to see it. So thank you. So that right back at you.
Thank you.
And on that note, I think it's a good time for us to look to wrap up. It's a couple minutes earlier than usual, but
that's my challenging technology on my drive, and I apologize for that.
No, that's okay. That's okay. We're getting better at this thing. As I mentioned before, in closing, we are now on Apple Podcasts, and then we can also be found, or soon to be found, on Spotify, and we'll be on other platforms as well. We have some exciting stuff coming up, which in the next coming days you'll see about the guests that are going to be joining us over the next coming weeks. And I was thinking about the last thing you said, Brian, when you talked about when we're vulnerable and we talk about the challenges either that we face being parents to children with special needs or accepting any kind of recognition for it, and that people see that and identify. We'd love to know what it is you identify with that we share, and just as if not more important, what you'd like to have us share, what it is that you'd like to hear about, what have we not talked about that you would like to see, because we enjoy this tremendously, but our level of enjoyment is measured by the level of value that we bring to the people that take the time to listen to this. There are people that are going to be listening to this that listen live. And now there's people that will listen to, a replay, whether it's on our YouTube channel, on the Facebook page, at Spotify, or at Apple Podcasts after the fact. So we'd love to hear, and we'll be getting a website set up, and we have an email address where we'll be taking information as well. The email address, I believe, is actually just2dads@gmail.com. If there's things you'd like to hear, topics, anything that you have questions about, feel free to let us know. And then just before we wrap up, one of the last things that we talked about, as I mentioned, we talked about estate planning and life insurance as it relates to special needs. This week, our firm actually has a financial literacy event that's taking place. I'll be posting the flyer on the page, on the Facebook page, and they're free events, and each day has a different topic. And they're things that apply to anybody that earns $1 and pays taxes, but they apply twice as much to those of us that care for and love someone with special needs. So make sure you take a look. If you want to attend, let us know. We'll make sure that we get you the link. And then again, as we always say each week, I want to make sure that I give thanks to my partners in Thrive, which is my wife, Laura, and my mom as well. And thank you, Brian. And then we want to make sure that you keep in mind and remember that there's somebody out there someplace that needs to know that you care. There's somebody out there someplace that's going through something. And the other thing is there's somebody out there somewhere that desperately needs for you to succeed because they need your example. And you may never even meet them. But at some point, they're going to see the example that you set. So any notion or idea that you have about succeeding or having a goal or dream come true, it's bigger than you. It isn't just about you hitting that dream. But just remember that you're capable of so much more than you might think. So for those that joined us, thank you so very much. Make sure that you check us out. We'll let you know what's coming up in the next couple of weeks. We've got some great guests lined up and some stuff that we're really excited about. So thank you so very much, Brian. And Blake, awesome. Drive safe. Okay? Take care.